right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight is night one of our Halloween week here on Fade to Black. We've got Jason Louv here with us. Tomorrow night, I want to remind everybody, we've got a big week lined up. Tomorrow night, Maureen Wood is going to be here sharing her favorite ghost stories from her new book, More Ghost Chronicles. Wednesday night, Shah the Loon Witch. For our 5th annual, 5 straight years of Shah here on Halloween doing your readings. 100 phone calls, 100 readings, back to back to back to back to back. It's going to be an amazing night with Shah. And then Thursday night, Adrian Valera is going to be here from Disclosure Fest to talk about the Washington, D.C. mass meditation going down on 11/11 at 11/11 at the Lincoln Memorial there in Washington, D.C. But tonight's Jason Louv. Jason is the author of 8 books, including John Dee and the Empire of Angels, Generation Hex, and Thee Psychick Bible. As a journalist, he has covered surveillance, international trade, and the dark side of technology for Vice News, Boing Boing, Motherboard, and many more. And as a futurist and a strategist, he has worked on Buzz Aldrin's international campaign to colonize Mars, Google's artificial intelligence program, and many more strange, wonderful places. But it's the start of Halloween week here on Fade to Black, and tonight we're going to talk about witches, warlocks, magic, the occult, and the history of Halloween. His website, of course, is jasonlouv.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Jason Louv. I'd like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Jason Louv. Jason, good evening, man.
Jimmy, how's it going, man?
It's great now that I hear your voice.
Thanks for having me back on.
It's been about a month. We had you over at Coast to Coast, which was absolutely amazing, and you did 4 straight hours on the air.
Wow, was that 4 hours?
Yeah.
It flew by. I have so much fun hanging out with you. It goes in a blink of an eye. You know,
it's pretty cool to get exposed to something like that, to see what a studio like that is, and the biggest network in the world and all of that. For you, that's cool. For me, because you get to see how the production goes down, and it's cool, it's fun. But for me, to have you there for 4 hours live, one-on-one, and to take phone calls and to engage in conversation, it's the best, because normally I'm there by myself. And I had a great time, so thank you for that. And you went to the bloody end, man. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. That was fun.
Now, here we are. Now, okay, this is what I'm... Can I say something crazy? I'm going to start off like this, Jason. You've written a lot about magic and the occult. And I know you. I've hung out with you. I've seen you in person. And in your pictures, when you talk about, in some of your presentations too, when you talk about magic and you're talking about the occult, or you're talking about John Dee, and you look at your image, you're a little warlockish.
I deny everything. I'm just a normal boy from, Southern California. There's nothing strange or out of the ordinary about me in the slightest.
Yeah, exactly. And so when people see you and you're talking about this and you're writing about this, they look at your picture and they're like, well, yeah, okay, makes sense. He's got a little something going on there. Did you always have that look, and are you cognizant of the look?
No, I'm completely unself-aware. So it must be something that, is just there. Maybe it's some type of, something strange radiating in my aura from all the weird things that I've done. But no, and, from my corner of the universe, I seem perfectly normal and mundane even, but who knows how other people see me,
Do you have a giant pentagram tattooed on your back?
I have 2 giant pentagrams, actually, one upright, and no, I actually have no tattoos. I'm very normal and boring, Jimmy. I kind of just watch Netflix and, and cook and summon creatures from the netherworld, and
you've got a cauldron. Yeah.
I have an instant pot. That's like a cauldron, right?
Well, you know what? For I think some witches probably use a crock pot for These days, it certainly saves on a lot of things. Well, but here we are. What is Halloween for you? I mean, I love Halloween. I love this time of the year. I love the smell. I love October, and it goes back to my childhood. For you, what is Halloween for you?
Well, first of all, every day is Halloween when you're me. But no, I think that Halloween for me is the one day that our society allows things to be a little fuzzy around the edges. It's the one day that we're allowed to let down our guard a little bit and maybe entertain the idea of other ideas about reality, the idea of another world, the veil between the worlds becoming thin. And I think that has always been really fascinating for me. And like you, I love the holiday and I love the smells and the experience and just that autumn feeling. But even more than that, I love that that's the day that our society lets down its guard, because the guard is all the way up every other single day of the year. And, we live in a very sterilized society sometimes. We live in a society that, in which flights of the imagination are seen as not productive or not helpful for society. And so, but our society allows this one pressure release where we can have this one day where just go wild, and entertain the idea of magic and spirits. And the kernel of it, the craziest thing about that for me is that really what is being pressure released there is the whole ancient pagan world. It's the natural state of humanity when we were immersed in the idea of spirits and magic and immersion in that level of reality before all of that was paved over by first, the domination of Christianity and then the scientific worldview and now the hyper technological world. All of that is like layers of pavement over what's really our innate nature, our innate way of being, this kind of shamanic, animistic, tribal worldview. And it's always there. It never goes away. Of course, some of us, love that so much that we decide to immerse ourselves in that type of thinking our whole lives. But, it can never be covered over. Just like, of course, Halloween is a Christianization of an older pagan holiday, just like all of our holidays. And that's always fascinated me. So I love that it's a pressure release and we get to play that day.
With the freedom that Halloween brings us, which is the ability to dress up, to have fun, to go to parties, to dress up, let our kids and our children have fun and freedom of expression. And, maybe somebody wants to dress up as a zebra. Somebody wants to dress up as a Star Wars character. Somebody wants to be a witch, right? Somebody wants to be a sexy nurse. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? You're supposed to have this freedom of expression. And now we're in this PC, politically correct world, and even Halloween isn't cool anymore. And I just don't get it. Isn't it supposed to be the one time where nothing matters and we're allowed to just let everything hang free?
Yeah, totally. But I think for that reason, Halloween has always been terrifying to people. It's the day, it's the night of the year where parents kind of let their children go out to go trick or treating, or maybe they don't. Maybe they don't even do that anymore.
Right,
the way things are now. But we live in such a controlled and fearful society that it's can we even let our hair down that much? I think that connecting it to the idea of free expression is really important. I mean, we live in a society now where people are. They have the ability to communicate all over the world, but they have to second and triple and quadruple guess everything they say in public and every tweet. And, anything you say at any time can and will be held against you. So we live in a culture that's quite, has the ability to have total freedom of expression, but is also very, very paranoid about, saying just the right thing. And, again, to bring it back to the ancient world, if you look at things like the Roman Empire or or similar things. Even the Middle Ages, there were always holidays. There were lots and lots of days where people were allowed to just let it all out. And that was important because, for instance, in the Middle Ages, life was short and hard and full of work and suffering and disease and fear. And for that reason, holidays were really important, and people needed opportunities to go wild, to get drunk, to put on masks. Masks, of course, allow you to be your true self and let down the escape in many ways what is a straitjacket put on us by society, which is, having to conform to society's expectations of us. So that's very, very healthy. It's important. I think in this country, for instance, it's why people go to Burning Man and festivals like that, because they need that pressure release. And I think that's very, very healthy for a society to have. And, whether it's Halloween or whatever it happens to be, Burning Man or whatever it happens to be, I think it's very, very psychologically healthy for people to be able to take off the mask. Ironically, when we put on a mask, we are able to take off the mask of our day-to-day personality, and I think that's very healthy for people.
There is a street in Venice Beach, where all of the houses, on Halloween, they are. I guess you could say that everybody's in the entertainment industry there. They're in the movie industry, special effects, costumes, directors, actors, right? And it's a couple of blocks, and they all participate in the craziest haunted house thing, walking up, special effects. It's totally cool. It's so much fun, and it's jam-packed with families, right? And we're there, and I'm trying to think, our daughters were probably at that time 8 years old, and we take them down there, Rita and I. We get down to the end of the street, we're around the corner, and they have a guillotine, right? It's this crazy giant guillotine. And they go, I'm standing there, and I got, I'm holding both of my daughter's hands, and we're trick-or-treating and doing all this stuff. And I'm looking at this guillotine, which is like 30 feet tall, like a real guillotine. Dude steps up, throws his head down on the thing, right? The blade comes down, chops his head off. The head goes rolling down this thing and into a bucket, right? Blood. And I was like, oh, my God. And everybody's freaking out. Now, it was pretty cool. Special effect. You have to ask Rita, too. I don't know how they pulled it off, man. It was really, really cool. Is that wrong? I'm asking, is that wrong? And I'm telling I'm standing there with my 8-year-old kids, and I thought it was real. Now, what do you think? What do you think?
Well, I think I think it's healthy as long as it's not actually real. It's like it's interesting that what came to me when you were talking about this is kind of what people want to do. Well, I don't want to say what people want to do, but there's always an element of society of there's resentment. The rich people fear poor people despise rich people. So I think it's very healthy, whether it's that or anything else, to kind of enact it and again have it be a pressure release and let off a little steam and kind of laugh about it and poke fun of it. It really drops the again, it's psychologically healthy. It lets off steam and allows us to express. It's important to express our perhaps dark and destructive urges as art or as play or as theater, so that they're released and they don't build up and turn into something that is actually destructive to society.
Now, what is when we look at the way that society now thinks about witches, there is kind of like 2 or 3 different ways to take a look. One, we have the Wizard of Oz, right? We have the good and the bad witches, and we can always think of the bad witch in the Wizard of Oz, riding the broom, the crazy hat, the crooked nose. maybe even a shade of green in her skin. There's that part. Then there's the good witch. Then there's the witches of Salem, and then you have witches today that'll say, oh, "No, you know what? Witches are good." You know, why has it twisted up in society now that witches are bad and they do bad things, but yet witches will defend themselves and say, "No, we do nothing but good things." Where did all of this start?
Well, I think the real core of thinking about witches is that it's a woman's symbol, right? It's a symbol of female wisdom, perhaps, and also, female power, perhaps. And it was always, of course, if you go back to the Salem witch trials and the witch burnings in the Middle Ages, there was this mass panic that women perhaps had magical powers that they were using for ill. And I think that's been reclaimed as a symbol by women currently, particularly young women who see that as a very empowering thing to be. I think women now, particularly, they like that idea. They like the idea of being a little magical, having a little bit of extra power. Of course, everyone likes that idea. Everyone wants to be a little bit magical and have a little bit of extra power or insight or whatever it happens to be. So, but the witch is a symbol that's been with us since the beginning of recorded history. I mean, we can talk about the Witch of Endor in the Bible, or we can talk about, there were accounts of witches in ancient Rome and all throughout in India and all throughout the entire world. And it's very much, I think, always been connected with the idea of there's just something about women that is indescribable and bewitching, and it can sometimes be quite frightening for men because, as men, of course, no matter how perhaps intelligent or rational we are, or powerful or wealthy, we're always at some level going to be under the power of women, perhaps heterosexual men. And I think, and really that's kind of all throughout history. We have the stories of, whole empires have fallen to one woman's whims. If you look at Helen of Troy, or there's so many stories like that from history, or from modern history where, a woman has been a very powerful man's downfall. So there's just something about women that seems to transcend anything that men can perhaps fathom or capacitate. And that's a very magical position, and something that I think has been quite, I think that people throughout history have been fascinated with, and of course terrifies some people and fascinates others. So yeah, I mean, there's so much there with the symbol and the reality of the witch.
And there's something else very interesting here. And I need to say this in defense of all the men in the world. Warlocks can't hold a candle to a witch. Nobody even cares. It's really funny, right? If you go, see, you laugh because you know exactly what I'm saying here. If you think about some of the pop culture ways of looking at this, whether it's like the TV show Bewitched, right? You had all of the witches, really the warlocks, and that they didn't have the power. They weren't, the real power lied within the witches, and I don't get that. Throughout history, witches are talked about all the time. Warlocks ignored, and I'm here to stand up. I'm here to stand up today for all the warlocks out there. But why?
Thank you, Jimmy.
Yes. Why is that?
Well, on a tangent, I have a very funny story to relate about that, which was a couple of years ago. I was in New York on a panel with the head of the I believe the International Psychoanalytic Association, and I was talking about magic, and he was quite terrified by this. Like very straight-laced psychoanalysts do not want to talk about these things. And he started immediately making fun of magic and saying like, oh, it's just, this obsession where you just, mysticism is just this obsession where you just want to go back to the womb and worship the goddess. And then he said, And, isn't it crazy that there's just witches everywhere? Every woman wants to be a witch, but there's like no warlocks. You can count them on one hand. And I said, can you imagine how good my life must be?
What was his response?
No response.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he knew what to make of that, but he was not a fan of me. But I think that the reality of that, I mean, this is something that has been talked about in mythology and sacred texts and religions all throughout human history, where, how do I put it? Men are very much about building and constructing and trying to understand what is, where women, particularly from the mystic end of thinking, are able to just embody what is. Women are much more in touch with their, of course, I'm speaking in generalities, and I don't mean to overly stereotype, but women, I think, in general, are much more in touch with their intuition and with the natural flow state of reality. And men, of course, are always questing for that. They want to understand it. They want to perhaps control it or possess it or in some way, match themselves to it. But women just are. They have a way of embodying it. In India, the classic phrase is Shiva cannot manifest without his Shakti. So, there's this understanding that,
right.
Behind every man it's not just behind every man is a good woman, because that implies some type of hierarchy. It's more that, men really are nothing until they are, within a productive partnership with, of the feminine force. And of course, this is, again, we're getting into kind of gender essentialism. It is not necessarily heterosexual. I mean, these things can both feminine and masculine qualities can manifest in either gender. So,
yeah, but throughout history, it's very easy to recognize who was always there: the sorceress, right? The witch. That it doesn't matter what culture. It was always the same thing. And when it came, what do we men have? What, Merlin? Right? There's not much out there representing us. Who was the guy that was the head of the Satanic Church up in San Francisco? What was his name?
Oh, Anton LaVey. He doesn't count. He didn't even really believe in anything supernatural.
Right, but Anton LaVey was never taken serious. Right? Had it been,
right.
I mean, it just never, right? And that was like the best us men could do. And,
well, there's tons of male magicians or warlocks throughout history. I mean, Apollonius of Tyana, Simon Magus, John Dee, Giordano Bruno, Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons.
Right.
But they tend to be, there's fewer of them. And it's a different attitude. It's a different perspective than the female perspective. And I think that even within the Western magical tradition, there's very much an understanding of the essential feminine quality of reality, and that reality itself is feminine and in a certain way, which is glyphed perhaps by the goddess Kali in India, or the goddess Babylon in Western magic, and many, many other symbols throughout world sacred cultures.
Yeah, and it's okay with me when we think about witches and different sorceresses, and look at Greece and Rome and Egypt and certainly the United Kingdom and Northern Europe, and here in the United States and Salem, and so for that it's all over the place. But the strong warlock figure, or that type of magical situation with the men, we haven't been represented. And John Dee, I'm just having fun here. John Dee, one of the most remarkable men throughout history, and and your book is amazing. And I had something that I had read. I want to try to keep this straight in my head over the weekend, that I didn't talk to you before about John Dee, and that's the Voynich manuscript. And yes, and you and I didn't discuss that. And over the weekend, I was doing some research, and that came up, and I was like, how did Jason and I not discuss that when he was on the show. But you're right, John Dee. But the point is, even with John Dee, you have to go and search for that. It's not like there's a John Dee TV series or comic book or pop culture thing. That is something that you have to go and dig for and be a historian or a fan of to go and get that revealed.
Right, but Charmed is back on TV.
I know it is. It is. And so is, you know what else is back on? Sabrina
the Teenage Witch.
Yep. Are you watching it?
Not yet.
Are you going to?
I will have a slumber party at some point where we all watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Okay, I'm gonna do the big reveal right now. I started watching it last night. I admit. I was like, okay, all right, let's go here. Let's see what's happening with this. I was as a father of two daughters. I was forced into watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch when it was in its first run. So I got to go back and revisit it. Let's take a break right here, Jason. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv. This is night one of our Halloween week here on Fade to Black. We're going to discuss everything. When we come back, we'll get into the history of Halloween. Of course, I want to talk about goblins. I want to talk about all of this stuff. We're going to do everything tonight here on Fade to Black. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Jason at Jason Louv, and we'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied, but you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Hello, I'm Katie Lee, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Reclaim your active lifestyle with Angioprim. Angioprim is the original liquid oral chelation supplement. Chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in your veins and arteries that can cause blockages. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. Find out more. Go to angioprim.com. Talk to a trained consultant by calling Angioprim toll-free 877-882-7221.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hey, it's Grace. Can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, You know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv. Night one of our Halloween week here on Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, Maureen Wood is going to be here. She's going to tell us her favorite ghost stories with the new book that she just co-authored, and we have it here. It's called More Ghost Chronicles. And Wednesday night, Shad, the Loon Witch, is going to be here. Now, check this out, Jason. There couldn't be a better warm-up to the show tonight. Before I got over to the bunker, one of our dogs was barking all day at our grill outside. Couldn't stop. He was staring at it. And so I went out there. Rita's standing behind me, and I'm like, man, what is going on with this? I open up the doors to the grill just to see, maybe there's a dead rat in there. I don't know. And opened it up, and there was a black cat, a kitten, inside of our grill, and just looked at me, these bright gold eyes. I scream, Rita screams. The cat bolts out of the grill, runs up the wall out of the yard. But there you go. The kickoff to Halloween week, black cat stuck in our grill, freaking out our dogs, scared us to death, and here we are tonight. Pretty cool.
There you go. Maybe it was just keeping your grill clear of mice. Maybe it was doing you a favor.
It was bizarre, man. I wasn't expecting anything, but our dog was just driving us crazy. It was Teddy, our dog, and just driving us nuts, and couldn't figure. It was, I don't know how it was little too, kitten, little cruiser guy about this big, and then took off.
That's more adorable.
I know.
Spooky.
I know. And now we bring up Sabrina and Charmed, and I'm watching Twitter here. I guess everybody is watching Charmed and Sabrina. Yeah, I don't feel so guilty in revealing the Sabrina the Teenage Witch thing. Okay, now let's talk about the history of Halloween, which if you go back to the etymology and you look at the name Halloween, first off, it's a Christian holiday, right?
Well, I'm looking at my vintage copy of the Man, Myth, and Magic Encyclopedia right now, which I'm sure many people remember from the 1970s. And it's informed me that it was originally a pagan holiday. It was originally a fire festival, and it goes back to the British Isles. It's a Celtic fire festival. And it was just like all the other holidays in pagan Europe, co-opted by the church as they came in and, conquered the pagans and co-opted their religions. Of course, they still wanted their holidays, so in many cases, they just renamed the pagan holidays with the names of Christian saints and Christianized them. But to all intents and purposes, they're still the same. Christmas, of course, is another example of that. Christmas was originally Yule, which was a pagan holiday where, trees were decorated and gifts were left under a tree. And of course, Santa Claus is a pagan symbol, and many people have suggested a symbol of the Amanita muscaria, a psychedelic mushroom that grows underneath trees in Northern Europe. But that was the deal with Halloween. It was a fire festival. It was a festival for communing with the dead, for communing with ancestors. Of course, ancestral rituals are common in every single religion, every single culture throughout the world prior to the coming of Christianity. Although you could argue that Christianity has its own forms of ancestral contact or worship. And that was the deal. And so this was around the 7th century. It was turned into a Christian holiday, and All Saints Eve instead of the original, or All Souls Day, followed by All Souls Day in Roman Catholicism, as opposed to the original holiday. But you can't change these things too much, because even if you look at Halloween just a little bit close up, there's not a whole lot of Christianity there.
When you go and you look and like I said, the etymology, right? Hallows means saints, so it was All Saints Eve was the true meaning of Halloween. I think a lot of people would be surprised by that.
Yes. Yeah. Certainly there was at least at one point, there was a Christian connection, and it was Christianized, but I think it's probably only skin deep, Now what? Okay, so then the jack-o'-lanterns. We'll talk about the candy and the celebration of the haunted houses here in a little bit, what it's turned into today. But the jack-o'-lanterns, they did, and I was watching or looking at some of the images back then, where they would do like different vegetables, cut faces into it and light them up from the inside. This goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Where did this tradition start with the jack-o'-lanterns? And because jack-o'-lanterns are scary, right? And you're supposed to carve them to be a scary face. You put a candle on the inside of it. It's glowing, and it looks like fire, and it's kind of frightening. Where did these traditions start, and why did they do it? Well, there's a couple threads to pull on there. One is, of course, that we can't forget the time of Halloween. It's also a harvest festival. It's it's an autumnal festival, and so it's the time when people are harvesting crops that have grown during the summer. And so, of course, there's lots of things like pumpkins and gourds and all of that are now fully grown and can be used. The other one is the idea that there's, I think, an instinctual dread in humans of the dark. And Halloween, of course, this time of the year is also the point in the yearly cycle where it starts to get dark. It's summer is definitely over. It's dark now. It's cold. There's that unmistakable autumn chill, the wind, the smell of Halloween, and that's the coming of winter. And so there's an instinct that winter is coming, and we can't forget that winter was not a trivial thing prior to, things like electricity and electric heating and things like that. I mean, people would die during winter if people did not get proper, if there wasn't enough firewood, if enough food had not been stored from the summer harvest, if perhaps crops were blighted, if there was less food than expected. Winter could be a very, very grueling and frightening time, and not every member of the tribe might make it. Not every member of the family might make it. People might die from lack of food or from cold. So there's a real fear there. So there's that. And I think that there was also this sense that it was because of the coming of the darkness, it was a kind of an in-between, neither here nor there. It's right on the cusp of these two seasons. And so because of that, there's this sense of, this space, this inner zone between two worlds. And so you see this idea repeated throughout cultures all over the world of wearing frightening masks or dressing up as demons or monsters or creating things like jack-o'-lanterns with frightening faces or creating some type or scarecrows, creating very frightful things. But it's not to celebrate that. It's actually, that's always to scare away evil spirits. It's to be more frightening and more scary, and to have great festivals with loud noises and firecrackers and things like that to frighten away evil spirits. And evil spirits might manifest as, blighted crop or, bad luck befalling the tribe or people freezing and things like that. So there was a real sense that it wasn't just play acting. There was this real need to scare away evil or scare away bad luck. And you see that repeated all over the world. James Frazer, the very famous anthropologist, talks about this in The Golden Bough. And this is really at the root of not just Halloween, but tons of festivals all over the world. You see it in Mardi Gras. You see it in Chinese New Year. And I think that, there's a real psychological component to it also. When we're with other people and we're kind of going crazy and we're being loud, we get to forget ourselves, and it scares away you might say, bad luck or evil thoughts that come from isolation or being separated from other people. When we're just stuck by ourselves, then the mind can turn to not very healthy avenues. Whereas in the just from social isolation, whereas in that setting of this loud, raucous, crazy group party, you're with the group and you're all being loud and you're alive, and the sense of life in you is pushing back the darkness for another day. And that's true of any party, I think. So that's what it's all about, in my opinion.
How did witches and warlocks and goblins and and devils and demons start to get associated with Halloween, where it went from one aspect of celebrating the dead, or the way that Christianity looked at it, and going back to the Celtic traditions of the end of a season? And I understand all of that. And then it got twisted into this horror side of it that they tried to paint this picture. When did that start? And it's never really stopped, has it?
Right. Well, we live in kind of a confused culture. We live in I don't necessarily want to say confused, but a culture where we have so many different influences from so many different things. So, of course, with Hollywood, we've got, what's there? What shows up in Halloween? We've got the old pagan stuff. We've got demons from Christianity. We've got Hollywood slasher movies. But now people don't even dress up as just scary things. It's like superheroes. It's just like everything gets let out. And this is kind of what I was touching upon earlier, where Halloween over time has become less of a harvest festival or less of a pagan thing and more. It's really, in this country, I think, become much more of a holiday about the imagination in general and celebrating the imagination. And that's something that we don't always, give its proper due the rest of the year. Although we certainly love to watch it and, watch movies, and now people do cosplay all year round and things like that. So things have changed a little bit, but we just live in we live in a mishmash culture where we've gotten so much stuff thrown at us by Hollywood. I mean, the whole idea of haunted houses and ghosts and things like that. I mean, that all comes from spiritualism in the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. There was all that obsession with trying to speak to the dead, and what we see in movies like Paranormal Activity or Hereditary and things like that. That's very much the legacy of spiritualism, which was also a very American religious phenomenon. But it's all thrown in there. It's all a big mash. I mean, kind of like America. I mean, America in general is, you can't really trace it to one culture or another. It's got inherited its cultural DNA from this, people have come here from all over the world to look for better lives, and all of our traditions and, have kind of been thrown together and made this new thing that's America. So that's kind of how that happened, I think.
Are you okay with, when we're talking about magic and of course the horror side of this and trying to scare you? Certainly, and here in Southern California, you are very aware of all of the different theme parks that we have here. The count is high. I don't know what it is, but their biggest 30 days of the entire calendar year is Halloween. Right? Every one of them has the biggest, best Halloween scary night thing that goes on for 30 days, goes on all month, and it has nothing to do with what Halloween used to be, even 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It has evolved into this haunted house scary thing about being frightened. And it's not what Halloween was about. How did this all start, and are you okay with it?
Well, I don't think it matters. I don't think my opinion matters on it much. But I think that I don't know if it is that different. I think that it's still the same impulse. It's still that same thing, because when people go to theme parks, it's still a group experience. It's still a crazy celebration. And it's kind of like horror movies, right? People don't watch horror movies because they want to actually be disturbed or hurt in some way. They watch horror movies because it's a controlled experience. I was actually thinking about this last night, and why was I thinking about this? I was, for some reason, I ended up watching like a YouTube countdown of the top Friday the 13th movies, or Friday the 13th movies ranked from worst to best. And I was thinking about this, and I thought, life is kind of like a slasher movie, right? It's like, we're all being stalked by death. We're all going to die at some point, and it's uncontrollable and scary, and we can't get away from it. And no matter what we do, we can't bargain with it. We can't try as we might. There's nothing we can do to stop the fact that death is inevitable, right? And people have tried everything and will continue to try every single thing they can to get away from that finality of life. But so I think that people watch horror movies because it's cathartic. It allows them a little taste of it, and they can feel that fear that is really the existential fear of being alive. But then they can turn, there's a conclusion to the movie. The good guys win, maybe. And they can turn it off and walk away, and they've it's a pressure release. They've released some of that fear and dread just of being alive. And I think that haunted houses and scary houses are theme parks are very much the same, but it also has that element of a group pagan celebration where everyone's there having it's a kind of religious thing, not in the sense of being a religion, but in the sense that people want this kind of shared experience that takes them out of themselves and gives them a heightened emotion, a fear state. And that's, of course, they're able to let go of perhaps stress and fear that's built up throughout the year.
That's the quote we're going to use from you from now on: the fear and dread of being alive.
Well, if you want to get right, well, there you go. If you want to get right down to the truth, there you go. It's like nausea, as Jean-Paul Sartre put it.
Now, what was I was just getting ready to ask you this, and it popped up on Twitter. What was Sam Hain? Let's get back to the basics here for a second. What was Sam Hain?
I believe Sam Hain is the same. It's the same holiday, isn't it? It's just I have to look it up. I believe it's the same holiday, or is it All Souls Day? No, it's okay. So Sam Hain is the Gaelic festival of Halloween, and it was celebrated October 31st and November 1st. So it is perhaps the original Celtic name of what became Halloween.
And how you mentioned this, it's a part of our history that a lot of us don't really understand. But the church needed to not so much make peace, but as it was, gain strength by embracing the pagan religions of what was going on in Great Britain. And the only way to do that was to look at a few of their holidays too as well and bring it into the Christian church and the Catholic church and figure out a way to move forward, like Easter and Sunday and what days of the week and what days were rest and what days were, all of these things were joined together. And that's what they did with Halloween. They did the very same thing as they did, like you mentioned, Christmas is another example.
That's right. I mean, you have to remember Christianity was an occupying force in Europe. It wasn't just Great Britain. It was all Northern Europe. And the tribes that were there, whether they were the, Gaelic, Celtic, or the Viking tribes, things like this, they had their own traditions and their own religions and their own gods going back thousands, in some cases, years, that were totally tied into their sense of tribal identity, that were kind of an unbroken line from their ancestors, that were created from their own experience of life and were totally different from the Christian view of life. For instance, if you look at Northern paganism and you look at their gods, Thor and Odin and Freya, none of those gods celebrate the idea of meekness or being kind or, turning the other cheek. No, they were all fearsome warriors, men and women. It's like that show Vikings, it was like they were all fearsome warriors. There's, of course, a classic phrase in Northern paganism that is, Jesus wants you to repent. Odin wants you to man the F up. So that was very much what the Norse gods were like. And so when Christianity went through, they had to conquer it. But, you can't really, as we know from studying occupation forces and things like this in history, it's very, very hard to just replace the religion of an indigenous people. It's very hard. And it can only be done by violence. And that's violence that is costly, that is bloody, that is very, unpleasant for everyone concerned. And ultimately, that only builds resentment. And when you build resentment like that, it breeds revolution, and it breeds, it causes more problems for the occupying force down the line, because it's just, people are going to, train in guerrilla warfare and things like that. So the genius, the genius in a way of Christianity in Europe is that they co-opted. And this is a strategy that people have taken since. The Roman Empire did similar things, but Christianity basically said, keep your holidays, keep your festivals, you don't have to change your way of life that much. You just have to submit to the church. You have to, and you can still keep your holidays, but we're going to name them after saints now, and they're going to be dedicated to the church. And so it's kind of a judo move in a sense, where instead of attacking the energy, they co-opted into their system. And this was a very, very devious and ingenious method of control that was used to control Europe, and has been used to control Europe for so long that people forgot that things had ever been any other way, and all of those original pagan religions and ancestral forms and gods are lost. People have tried to reconstruct them, but the academic sources are very scant, and any type of new paganism that people have tried to bring back, as they're, for instance, trying to do very hard in Iceland right now, it has to be almost recreated from scratch, because it was all just paved over, and we have little survivals of it here and there. But Jimmy, I think that people don't change that much. And I think that it's kind of like what we're talking about with Halloween being a pressure release, that the memory never goes away. It's kind of like almost at a cellular or a body level. People still, and of course the pagan rituals and all that were an expression of something that people needed in human nature anyways. Christianity very much celebrates the idea of people being meek and docile and overcoming their animal natures, whereas paganism in many ways celebrates the animal nature of human beings and is essentially just allows them to be as they are and get their crazies out in a productive way, like some of the ways we've been talking about.
Janine just tweeted out that you and I are assaulting the ears of all Gaelic Celts. Sam Hain is pronounced Sohwain.
Oh, no.
You know what?
Many apologies.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, actually.
I see. That's the politically correct world that we live in today. Right? It's just another example of that. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Tonight is night one of our Halloween week. Of course, Jason Louv is here. We're discussing all of it. Witches, warlocks, goblins, the occult, magic, and the history of Halloween. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. And last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously. Go Beckley Tappy. Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products, available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Oh, man, Twitter. You guys have lost control of yourselves. Oh, man. Tonight, night one of our Halloween week, Jason Louv is our guest, and we're discussing all of it. I want to know about witches and warlocks and magic and the occult and the history of Halloween. And Jason, you mentioned earlier, I want to go back. I need some clarification here. You said, like, what's going on in Iceland right now. What's going on in Iceland?
Oh, yes, there's actually... There's a man named Hilmar Orm Hilmarsson, and I don't, for anyone who's from Iceland, I might have got that one wrong too, but he's a very, very famous musician who's also the head of the Asatru Church in Iceland. Asatru is northern paganism, and he has been working on building the first pagan temple, I believe, in Northern Europe in the last 1,000 years. And it's either been completed or just about to be completed. And paganism, people are actively worshiping the Norse gods in Iceland for the first time again, and perhaps, openly. People have always done it, but openly in a real way in the last 1,000 years. And it's popping up in the mainstream news a lot lately. It's a huge project that they're up to. Some of my friends over there have told me about there's a real urge, people really want to rediscover their authentic spirituality and a sense of connection. And I think it's no mistake because we live in such a, disconnected time. We live in a time in which we're all isolated from each other, even though we have social media, which somehow seems to isolate us more. We don't have a sense of connection to our ancestors or our past. We're very unrooted. That's a process that's, of course, been going on since industrialization, when people were torn away from their families to go work in factories. But now even more so, people don't really have an identity outside of what's offered to them by, whatever the latest Star Wars movie is or something like that is the closest they get to having, their identity is what brands they like, what TV shows they like, things like that. So I don't think it's any mistake that there's a real hunger and a real need, because that's part of human nature. We need to be connected to not just our own spirituality, but our own past and our sense of where we've come from. Otherwise, we're unrooted and just drifting in the abyss of, hyper-capitalist society.
What do we, I want to stay on this for a second, because I've always been interested in the pagan side of things. But what do we really know? What do we really understand? Are there texts and things that have been handed down? Because when we look at, the origins of, say, Stonehenge, and that was built by the pagans, but we really don't know, or do we? Are there texts and things that have been handed down that go back, 3,000-4,000 years?
There are bits and pieces, but the reality is we really don't know anything. And since the 60s, since the neo-pagan movement, there has been this real drive to resurrect these things and to call them back. And of course, a lot of the people who started neo-pagan groups in the 60s did so and gave themselves an air of legitimacy by saying that they were in some type of unbroken tradition going back hundreds of years that had been, that had just been hidden during the burning times or something like this. But the reality is, all of these things were created mostly out of, Tolkien books and things like that. And there was a lot of make-believe and best guesses. And I think that's changed recently. There's been a lot of emphasis on academic rigor, of which my book is part. In the magical world, people really want to get to the academic sources. But even that said, we still don't know really anything. If you want to see an unbroken pagan tradition, you have to go to India, because Hinduism is essentially very, very similar in many ways to what Northern European paganism was. Hinduism is much closer, or I should say Northern paganism, European paganism is much, much closer to Hinduism than anything from Christianity. They're very, very similar. And India, of course, has had unbroken religious continuity for perhaps 10,000 years. And it stands as a real inspiration. My friend Aki Sederberg wrote a book called Journeys in Pagan India, where he's from Finland, and he went to India to rediscover what living paganism is like, because it's all around you there. It's the whole country. It's everyone is participating in it. But then he ultimately was drawn back to Northern Europe and realized that he needed to rekindle his own sense of his own ancestral tradition. But that's a tall order, because it's very fragmentary. Not much was left after the tide turned to Christianity.
That's very interesting, because we know, well, okay, let's make a general statement. Let's just piss off everybody right now. In that, is every Christian Catholic holiday celebration borrowed? Right? And then if what you're suggesting here is even the pagan traditions, are those borrowed from India?
Well, one thing that has always fascinated me is that, and I can't back this up, but I feel this to be intuitively true as somebody who spent a lot of time in India, a lot of time immersed in Hinduism, basically, and the pagan traditions of India throughout most of my 20s, frankly, and both there and here. And has also spent a lot of time, obviously, around magic and the European traditions and the witch traditions. I think they were one thing. I think that it was one thing that kind of an Indo-European religion, if you will, that wasn't an organized religion, but was like a form and a pattern of life that stretched from India to Europe. I've seen hints online, or I've seen people saying online that it's believed that the Vatican, that there was what's called a Shiva Lingam, which is a statue that is a combined male and female symbols of male and female genitals, was that the Vatican was built over. And in fact, many of the Christian sites in Europe, including St. Paul's in London, were built over pagan temples. But I think that it was probably one big thing stretching across that part of the world.
Do you remember the film Zeitgeist?
Yes.
Okay. The opening 5 or 10 minutes of that film, I watched over and over and over again, trying to absorb the seriousness of what was being presented there. And going back to all of the, the sunrise and sunset and set and what this really meant, going through Christianity and Jesus and how many different deities or worshipped symbols over the years all were born of a virgin mother, right? For example, it's like everybody was born on Christmas Day and what December 25th was and the changing of the sunset rising and going from east to west, all of that throughout. And you go and you investigate that, and it seems to be based on truth. Well, then that kind of breaks down everything, which goes right to what Halloween is today. And is that something that we need to take serious? You know what I mean? Where all
is that a pun?
Yeah, right.
The word serious for a reason.
Yes. Well played. But yeah, you know what I mean? And going to the three kings and the three wise men and the stars in the sky and what all of this was represented, it didn't happen at the year zero. Right, this is something that was going on through all cultures and religions throughout the world, predating Christianity by, in some cases, thousands of years. Like you're saying, with India going back 10,000 years.
Well, I look at it like this: when you really get down to it, all religions, all stories, all art are attempts to make sense of the human experience. And the human experience is not that different. It is not, from culture to culture, from person to person, or from millennia to millennia. So human beings really have kind of a limited number of symbols available to them. What are the symbols, the realities that we're confronted with on a day-to-day basis? You know, the sun, the moon, the male, the female, the cycle of plants, the animals in our lives, the life cycle of a human being from baby to adolescent to adult to elderly to on the deathbed. You know, these are the symbols that we have available to us, and these are the forces with which we must contend and the forces that make up our lives. And these forces have been symbolized by cultures all throughout the world in different but similar ways, either as occult symbols or as gods, you know, gods of the sun or gods of the moon or gods of time or gods of the harvest, you know, the crops, the river. This is just the stuff of human life. So when you get down to the core fundamentals of existence, they're the same cross culture and cross periods of time. So it's not any big conspiracy that there's so many similarities in religion and so many repeating motifs and themes. The other part of it is that you have to remember, again, prior to Christianity, these things were fluid. There was not a sense of set dogmas, particularly when the Silk Road still existed. There was, you know, trade along the Silk Road, and different cultures came into contact with each other, and they shared gods because they didn't have this idea yet that there was one right way, and anything that did not follow that one right way was heresy. That was a later development in history. And, you know, we can see that tendency arising in Christianity and Islam, and to some extent in Buddhism also, of, you know, people trying to codify a, you know, one way that it works. But prior to that, it was kind of like, you know, it's just like if you imagine you're at a big party or like at Burning Man, and, you know, you're having your party with your gods, but somebody over next to you in their camp is having their party, and oh, that looks like fun. You want to go like hang out with them, and then, you know, they like with the way you do it, and it all kind of, you know, mixes together. And that's really what it was like in the ancient world and along the Silk Road. So if you look at China and India and Europe, you'll see similarities. In even Egypt, you'll see similarities and blendings between all of them. There's evidence even that there was, you know, Greek gods ended up in Buddhism or vice versa. Buddhism absolutely had an influence on Christianity. Christianity would not have happened without the influence of Buddhism, which began 500 years before Christianity, and so on and so forth. You know, it's just like, in a way, the internet, where everyone's kind of, you know, cross-pollinating. That's just what humans do.
And with each of the holidays and all of the religions, eventually it was all used in some form or another to keep control, to keep society from spinning out of control, to create different rules and laws, basically to make sure that we didn't spin out of control. We continued to reproduce, we continued to harvest and feed and move on and develop. So there's that aspect of it. And then certainly Halloween had those same things. You had mentioned this earlier, a way to chase away evil spirits, and it was a way to control society. And today, Halloween has, and I want to talk about magic, where we have witches and cauldrons and spiders and spells and potions and things, where that has rolled into Halloween, where that had nothing to do with it before, did it?
Right. Well, you know, these things were under Christianity and during the Middle Ages, these things were absolutely used as a system of control, and there wasn't any distinction between church and state. By the way, I'm not totally convinced that's a completely negative thing. I think that society does need structure and does need a certain level of control, because otherwise we just have anarchy and violence, and people need structure as much as the, you know, my inner, you know, anarchist or libertarian or whatever, as much as my, you know, that part of me would love to believe that people are, will just inherently do the right thing if they don't have social control on them. I don't think that that's actually true. I think that people do need a certain level of structure. It makes them happy. It gives them a sense of structure to their lives. That said, in terms of, you're talking about, the idea of witches and magic and things like that, I think that it's fascinating that also has become part of this repressed world, because magic itself is also something that people are quite often frightened of. They're frightened of it because it doesn't have rules. Religion has rules, it has structure, it has well-lit paths. Magic doesn't have any of that. It has guidelines, but you're basically on your own. And that, again, I believe is more real. It's more true because magic gets closer to the truth of the human experience, that it's just us naked shivering before the void. And we need to make our own meaning and structure out of that. And ultimately, all these human created things like religion and social structure are artificial forms that are just there to keep social cohesion. Be that as it may, it's quite frightening to immerse yourself totally into the world of magic and the unconscious sometimes, in the sense that it forces you to confront yourself and see what's truly inside yourself. This is what most people, frankly, in the modern world spend all of their time trying to avoid. People do everything they can to not have to face themselves. What's the new iPhone? What's on Netflix? What drinks can we drink? What drugs can we do? What, political strife can we get wrapped up in? Almost everything that people do is this great, drama, this great, sound and fury signifying nothing, as Shakespeare put it, just to, in a way, serve a similar function to what I was talking about of scaring away the darkness, just making these loud noises to scare away the existential dread of existence. But magic is different. Magic immerses you totally in what's there. And it's another one of those forces that society often feels the need to control, much like sex. Society feels the need to control and put strictures and bounds on. And magic is very much the same. And so I don't think it's any mistake that it's become associated with this one day where it's like, okay, on one day, we will give you one day and maybe a little bit of the hangover of the next day to allow these things to be real and allow these things out into conscious awareness, to allow, perhaps in psychoanalytical terms, to allow a breach of the unconscious into conscious awareness. But of course, as we all know, the unconscious is where the truth is. The unconscious is where the reality of who you actually are is, and that's why people try to keep the door slammed on it.
I know, totally. And so, who is responsible for the dumbing down of the holiday and incorporating, like I said, witches and broomsticks and spider webs and bats and cauldrons with crazy, mist coming out of it? And who is responsible for either ruining the holiday or just taking it completely out of context?
Well, I don't necessarily know if it's ruined or taken out of context. It's just expressed in a different form for the world that we live in. It matches the world that we live in a way. And I think that it's the same. It's just the spirit of our time in a way. It's like every other holiday, at least in America, has become, our holidays are no longer Christian in a way, because Christianity has ceased to become a very prevalent force in America. And Christianity, in a way, has been replaced with the consumer cult, where people are now, they idolize consumerism and, movies and TV and technology and, the all-powerful market. And so all of these holidays, in a way, are no longer truly pagan, and they're certainly not Christian anymore, because what people are really worshiping, in a way, is money or just simply commercial activity, in the sense that Christmas is an excuse to buy lots of stuff for the people in your life. And for most companies, the holiday season is the most important season of the year for them. Valentine's Day, of course, also a very important consumer holiday because people buy things for their sweethearts. They get C's candies, they get flowers, and these things in a way have now been refashioned, again, co-opted. When Christianity co-opted them from paganism, but now they've been co-opted from Christianity in a sense by capitalism and turned into a way to keep the keep the flows of commerce going. They're they've kind of become the stations in the cycle of the market, rather than the natural growth cycle. And they're very important to the U.S. economy. The holiday season is critical. Holiday earnings are critical for the stock market. And Halloween and Valentine's Day and to some lesser extent Mother's and Father's Day and other holidays are very important markers in the consumer cycle. So these holidays have again been repurposed to perhaps our true god now, Mammon, which I think both Christians and pagans alike would be upset about if they thought about it for more than 5 seconds.
Yeah, certainly. And with the criticism of the Catholic Church today and Christianity and the attendance of churches and Saturdays has dropped. Do you see a future for paganism? Do you see a future where we could have? I mean, could it replace modern religions?
Well, that's a big question. That's a fascinating question. That's a big question too. I think that I'll just go off demographic numbers because this is something that I look at a lot. Every single religious Christian denomination in America is shrinking to the point where many of these denominations are on the verge of going completely extinct. Presbyterianism is an example. Presbyterianism may not exist in 10 years. However, Roman Catholicism is still growing very rapidly. For various demographic reasons, and also because they've expanded into Latin America and Africa. In America, however, and this is fascinating, paganism is the fastest growing religious demographic, and particularly among younger people. I don't think that's a big shock because, particularly younger people have all been raised on Harry Potter and Charmed and Sabrina.
Right.
But I wouldn't necessarily say that it would be a replacement, and I don't even know if that would be a good thing. But it's certainly in our current world, it's being allowed to regrow where it was once cut off almost at the roots. It's now regrowing, and I think that it really offers young people a sense of empowerment, which is not something that they get from, certainly not the media, probably not from parents, probably not from the school system. Our young people feel very powerless and adrift and hopeless. And paganism gives them a sense of personal empowerment in a way that very few things can. And for that reason, I think it's going to keep growing and keep getting bigger and bigger. And I hope becoming more mature and more theologically mature. And that's something that I've hoped to play a role doing in my life. And because it is, quite frankly, not a particularly theologically mature religion, certainly not when you compare it to something like, even Catholicism or even Buddhism, in a sense. It doesn't have a fully worked out metaphysics. So that's something that I've been doing my part to contribute to. But broadly speaking, I think that I'm not, and I don't mean to bash Christianity, by the way, or give a sense that I'm anti-Christianity. I'm very pro-true Christianity. I certainly don't like the abuses that we've seen in the Catholic Church or the excesses of evangelical, the evangelical movement and things like that. I'm pro-true Christianity. I'm pro-spirituality, and I think that we need, whatever it is, we do need spirituality because we live in a culture that only offers us stuff to buy, and that's not enough.
We have. We're going to take a break here in 2 minutes. Help me understand as quickly as you can when it comes to paganism. Is there, here, with Catholicism and Christianity, where you have, God right? God, whatever that may be. Is there the same thing in paganism? Is there a God?
Well, it depends on where what angle you look from. I would say in the true sense, and when you really get down to it, paganism is very much similar to animism, or at the low reaches or at the high registers, it's very similar to the non-dual enlightenment traditions or Advaita Vedanta, where really the core of paganism is seeing everything as divine. God is kind of manifest as everything, including all of nature, and everything is holy. Nothing is separate from that primal unity, and that it's very hermetic in that sense.
Is there a creator, though? Is there a creator? Some pagan traditions, we'll talk about the goddess or the horn god, or they'll simply worship nature as the creator. But it varies from group to group. But it tends not to be the Judeo-Christian God. And is there a God that you can piss off and be banished somewhere?
Well, I think that most pagan groups tend to be very, have a broad way of looking at this, where they tend to celebrate lots and lots of gods. I mean, paganism is polytheistic by its very nature. So you'll often see modern pagans worshiping, let's say, Egyptian gods and Hindu gods and Norse gods, and perhaps also Jesus, and putting all this together in the sense that all these gods can coexist, and that perhaps you go to different gods because they have different specialties for addressing different things in your life. That's how I tend to see it practiced on the ground, where people, often, people have a very, very liberal take. Well, they're interested in everything, and they want to incorporate anything as long as it helps them.
It's an unbelievably fascinating subject when we talk about paganism. I have tried to get to the bottom line. Like you said, there isn't a continuous, not like India, right there, but the traditions are broken in that there isn't one defining book or text. Well, we'll pick up where we're leaving off right here. This is Fade to Black. It's Halloween. This is Jason Louv. We'll be right back.
This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up. Standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out. That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-717-WAVE, 888-717-WAVE, or visit dryhealthyhome.com. Dryhealthyhome.com.
Ride the Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Night one of our Halloween week. Tonight it's Jason Louv. And tomorrow night, right here, Maureen Wood is going to be here sharing her favorite ghost stories with us. And then Wednesday night is Shah, the Loon Witch. Now, Jason, I wanted to ask you a question. When you look back at your childhood and you think about those warm and fuzzy celebrations and holidays, for me, I'm just going to say it. It's Halloween. Those are my fondest memories. How about you? When you look back, what do you think about?
Oh, always Halloween.
I
mean, I love Christmas. I love Christmas too. But yeah, no, Halloween. I would always, dress up as a vampire or something. Or yeah, it was. I just, like you said at the beginning of our show, it's like it's that sense of otherworldliness, the smell, how it feels in autumn, the cold breeze, things like that. It just adds up to this mystical time.
Is it because you got all jacked up on sugar for a month?
That must be it. I distinctly, yeah. Looking back, it's like, so it's probably like the worst thing to do for growing children, right? It's just like completely like jack them up on high fructose corn syrup, and it's not just the one day too, because if you stock up on all the candy that you get, you could be eating that for weeks.
For weeks. And even, what's funny, at the end of, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you're at the bottom of your Halloween bag, those candy, the leftover stuff was probably the worst to eat too as well. But you did it all.
For me, it was always the plain Tootsie Rolls were what were left at the bottom. They're the least exciting candy.
Yeah, or like Dum Dums. Right?
Yeah. Totally.
Oh man, I loved. I never had a bad Halloween memory. I really don't. There were some questionable Christmases for me, definitely in there. Okay. But somebody just said Snickers in my veins. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always, I'm just going to share this with everybody. One of my siblings, I'm not going to say which one, loved Milky Ways. I couldn't stand Milky Ways. So I was able to trade Milky Ways for Snickers. Oh man. And I just thought you're not that smart, but I'll continue trading my Milky Ways for Snickers. And man, I would just get jacked up on sugar, and I would let my kids do the same thing today. I just won't change this holiday. To me, it's just one of the best.
It's a tradition.
Yeah, it is. It is. Now, I wanted to ask you. Let's go back to warlocks for a second. Was John Dee? No, I'm being serious.
From Snickers to warlocks.
Yes, and it all makes sense. Well, you said vampire.
Full circle.
You said vampire. Was John Dee a warlock in the classical sense?
Well, not really, because if we really want to get nitpicky about it, the witchcraft and the whole witchcraft is really it's closer to European paganism, like we were talking about. It's much more of a folk tradition and like something that's done around the hearth and is passed down in family lineages. John Dee was a hermeticist and a scientist and a very, very advanced mathematical and spiritual thinker. And in the tradition of Western ceremonial magic, which certainly borrowed from witchcraft. For instance, in the case of Cornelius Agrippa, who codified some of the rituals and doctrines of witchcraft in his book, three books of occult philosophy, and incorporated them into the corpus of ceremonial magic. But what John Dee was doing was much closer to the science of his day than perhaps, folk witchcraft. And in that sense, he wasn't exactly a warlock, if a warlock is a male witch, although Edward Kelly, his associate, was much closer to that image.
The magic today, and where we can talk about Wiccans or witches, are they synonymous, or what is the difference?
Well, again, it's one of these things that when we're talking about people today, it doesn't truly matter because, well, that's the wrong way to put it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, all of this stuff has been constructed from people's imaginations or reconstructed from books when we're talking about neo-paganism. And that's a statement that's going to upset a lot of people, but it's also true. The modern neo-pagan movement and witchcraft movement are largely reconstructed and not really based, in many cases, there's things taken from fantasy novels, there's things that people have taken from TV shows and movies and things like that, or just from their own intuition. And so there's not, it's a fuzzy territory. It's best not to get too specific about these things because the differences at the end of the day are pretty small if you really zoom out far enough. It's like that people in the magic world love to label and categorize themselves and say, well, I'm a heathen, or I'm a Gardnerian Wiccan, or I'm a traditional witch, or I'm a tantric, or whatever. But for the majority of society, it all looks the same to them. So you just zoom out and look from the outside, and there's not really a whole lot of difference between these belief structures. And when you kind of put them all together demographically, that's when you get that figure that paganism as a whole is, the fastest growing religious group in America. But it's only when you see all these things as kind of one, different flavors of one phenomenon, like the 31 flavors at Baskin-Robbins, which again will upset people, but it kind of is the truth if you zoom out far enough.
Well, why is it that, help me understand this, because you do, I don't understand it. When, and I hear it all the time, where I'll hear, you know what, I'm a Wiccan. Don't lump me in. I'm not a witch, right? Don't lump me in with that. And I don't understand, like you said, they're very quick to classify themselves in that circle of magic. But out here on the outside, we don't understand.
Well, look, everyone wants to be special, and everyone wants to, have attention for their flavor being slightly different. And that's not just magic. I mean, there's the phrase that you may know, the tyranny of small differences, that basically means that in any group where people are pretty much all the same, what happens is people obsess over minor differences and turn them into a way bigger deal than they actually are. Because one of the things, both the strengths and weaknesses of paganism or magic or neo-paganism in general, is that it's a very individualistic thing. It's not as much congregational outside of perhaps Wicca or things like this. Whereas in Christianity or other mass religions like that, there's one truth and you go to church and everyone's on the same page. Whereas in the neo-pagan groups, it's very much about the individual, about individual empowerment, about people becoming, living the life they want to live, becoming special in some way. And so what ends up happening is that's very strong. That's a real strength because people make their own way, and it's a spirituality that they create for themselves and carve out for themselves and almost create as an artistic work. But it becomes a weakness because, for the reason we're discussing, where there's no uniformity of belief between people. And so people very much will end up in this tyranny of small differences and saying, well, you're not doing it. You're a Wiccan and I'm a Thelemite. So we're obviously totally on different pages. And, it's like trying to have an anarchist meeting, like that old joke. It's like herding cats. And so that becomes a weakness ultimately of neo-paganism, where everyone is so individualistic that they find it hard to all get on the same page. And so I don't know. I mean, for people on the outside, that must seem very confusing. It's also confusing on the inside. But that's kind of the deal with paganism.
And then we have one of the scariest words out there that has been very generalized is occult. And when we hear, most of society, when they hear occult, they immediately go to the dark side. And then you have the defenders of the word, which will say, no, it just means hidden. Well, you know what? It's hard to change the mind or mindsets when it comes to a word like the occult. Let's clearly define it now, because the occult has been now associated with Halloween or darkness, when certainly that is not the case. Or is it?
Right. Well, the occult is too broad of a term. In my work, I use the phrase Western esoteric tradition, which is really the hidden spiritual tradition of the West that is the parent tradition of science, and that is run throughout, and could also be called Hermeticism. And we need to be specific about terms like that. But in general, occult means hidden, and it means, a form of spirituality that is not generally practiced by the masses. So, but there's a real issue there, which is we've had decades of fear propaganda from Hollywood, and there's a big round of it that's just happened again. Of course, in the 70s, there were movies like The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby that have zero to do with anything in neo-paganism or the occult, and they're just shock movies, largely designed to scare people away from straying too far, perhaps, from the church. And those movies really conditioned a whole generation. And we're seeing another wave of it right now, like with this movie Hereditary that just came out, which I thought was well done, but is, it's like like a shock movie. It's like one of these scared straight movies they show kids to tell them not to do drugs. I mean, like, that's kind of the deal with these movies and alternative spirituality, or movies like, Paranormal Activity, or, recent movies like A Dark Song. And there's been a big crop of them recently. And I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think it's random, because people are, young people in particular are fascinated with magic. And it's, like I said, becoming the fastest growing religious movement in the country. And that's quite threatening to the religious authorities. Now, the converse of that is that, for instance, practitioners of alternative spirituality are always accused of various fanciful things from Hollywood. But if you look at just the headlines today, it tends to be organized religion that is responsible for this. I mean, I don't need to repeat all of the headlines that have been coming out about the Catholic Church and this organized, decades-long child sexual abuse. The Catholic Church, by and large, is the source of these great crimes. And there's a lot of shadow projection going on. And, there's shadow projection is something that people do. It's a psychological mechanism. And that's, it's a terrible thing.
And well, let's stay on that for a second. So now we have that word occult that has all of these connotations. I will agree with you. When you go back to what happened in the 70s with The Exorcist and with Rosemary's Baby, I mean, we have to be honest here. That last 10 minutes of Rosemary's Baby, the first, 3/4 of the film were a great setup. And then that last 10 minutes was about as scary and as frightening as it gets. And now we have the tie-in with the occult. And today, you can't shake it. It's like a decades-long a tarnishing of the word that it may not ever be overcome, will it?
Well, I think it will be overcome, because I think we have a whole generation of kids who were, yes, there's that, but we've also had a whole generation of kids raised on very positive media like Harry Potter or, again, Charmed and things like this. And I don't think they can put they can't put the cat back in the box, as it were. We have the internet now. People have access to good media, and they can read these things for themselves, just in the sense that, even if you look at, for instance, look at how marijuana was treated in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, and that crazy movie Reefer Madness and all of that, where they had this movie about, people carry around marijuana joints in tomato cans, and they smoke them, and then they turn into axe murderers, and just this total nonsense propaganda insanity. And I think that as people become more informed and they begin to realize, the real crux of it is realizing that spirituality is something that we should take responsibility for, and as a conversation, and is something that you train. Spirituality is not just something you accept or a dogma. It's something you have to train in, like going to the gym. Meditation you have to do every day. You have to focus on what you truly want in life every day. And if you stop using it, you lose it. So as people begin to come to realize that the spirituality is something that humanity needs to get good at just as much as it's gotten good at technology and materialism, then these superstitions will fade away and be shown to be just that, the superstition of scared people.
And, well, speaking of Rosemary's Baby, which tended to suggest a coven or a group, right? That's ultimately what was there. What's the difference between like a solitary witch and ones that are part of a coven? And are you part of a coven?
No, I never leave the house unless it's to talk to you, Jimmy. I'm an exceedingly boring and normal person. No, I think that, well, let's see. Well, sometimes, some people are social and some aren't. Some people get into groups to explore things like this. And, what's a coven? In our modern world, it's, 5 exceedingly attractive 23-year-olds in Brooklyn, that's,
right.
That's, it's like a group of friends. I don't think all these sinister things need to go, in my opinion. And as somebody who's spent a lot of time trying to modernize these traditions, it all needs to go. And it needs to go in the sense of people putting these sinister images on magic to scare people, but it also needs to go from the other side, which is the kitsch factor. I think that people who are into these things very often adopt the symbols of Satanism or Rosemary's Baby or, Hammer horror movies, and they kind of own it, they wear it, but it's just so kitschy that at a certain point we just have to go, okay, what is actually useful about these things? There's a real technology here. What are the things within this vast field of magic or neo-paganism in general that are actually useful and can actually make our lives better. And let's just focus on that and drop the BS. That's my view on it. I think all of that stuff is window dressing and play acting, and you wouldn't catch me dead, dressing up in a robe or, any of that silliness. My version of magic is focusing on exactly what I want in my life, laying out a plan to get there, getting the best information that I can to get there, and then enacting my will within the world, which I don't need, silly play acting implements to do, or, this kind of hammer horror image of a cauldron. And, for me, it's like, it's directed will. It's changing reality in conformity with will. And to do that, I'll use whatever the best tech tools are. It's not all this silly stuff. It's like, Google, computers, extremely advanced information technology, things like this, whatever the best tools I can get to enact my will meaning what I truly want to be doing with my life. It's like, how do I live the life that I am meant to live? That's what it's about, instead of going back to sleep and being carried along by the current of the world that leads to nowhere. Which is what most people do, carried away by the river of Netflix into Nowheresville. It's about finding your will and enacting it in the world. And that means living the life that you're truly meant to live. And everything else is stage props, and all this spooky stuff is Hollywood.
Well, I'm just going to let the audience know I've seen Jason's house, and he bought the Munsters house, and that's where he lives now. And it's time for you to come clean, Jason. It's okay. It's okay. I
actually am Herman Munster.
You are Herman. Well, you're about that tall. Years ago, I'm going to go back to the early 90s, maybe around 1990. I went over to a friend's house. I was with another friend, and we went into this apartment, and on the floor in the carpet was a pentagram. It was probably 5 feet in diameter, and it's in the carpet, and it's made with melted black candle wax. Right now, I go in and I see this, and I was completely freaked out. Now, when I saw it, I was affected. It was it's like, any other sigil or any other symbol that you see like this, but I was immediately affected by it, and it was powerful. Now, the person that did this obviously was practicing something. And it changed my view of this person forever. Somebody that I had known for a long time. Why would somebody do that? Are they practicing something that this is a necessity? Do you understand where I'm going with this? Where somebody has taken that kind of drastic step in their own home.
It could have just been some weird swingers thing. I don't know.
Oh.
There's always that option.
Well played. Well played.
But broadly speaking, I mean, I don't know. Look, there's so many. Magic is just a word, right? And people bring their own level of consciousness to it. And I tend to use magic as a tool for expressing universal truths to the world and focusing on what's truly good in life. But that lots of people have a different, perhaps less, a less well constructed view of it. And yeah, I mean, people can, symbols can be focuses or foci for energies, intention, magical intent, and emotion, just like anything else can be. And, if you can make a symbol, and you can, if somebody puts their own negativity into it because they're a negative person, then yeah, you're going to feel a negative vibe around it, and it's not going to be pleasant. But that's not something that's inherent in magic itself. It's just that's how they've used the tool. It's like magic is just a tool. You can use it the right way or you can use it the wrong way. And there are many people that use it the wrong way. And that, by the way, that tends not to be some super sinister thing. It just tends to be kind of lame and not particularly productive. And one of the reasons why I teach magic is to show people there actually is a right way to do it. It will be more beneficial for everyone in general, and more positive and more supportive of the good things in life.
Well, I'll tell you what the effect on me, and we're going to take a break right here. But after seeing that, I'm nice. I'm nice to everybody. But to this particular person, I was exceedingly nice and pleasant. I did. You know what I mean? I didn't want any negative vibes. It was just so funny how it affected me. It really, really did. I absolutely, I respect everybody, but the respect went up a level in that I did not want to offend. I didn't want any evil spells projected on me. Yeah, but I'm serious. It really shook me. It did. And the other part is that that I thought about was that I wonder how many people come into this apartment, right? How many people are exposed to this? And I am right now, and why is this going down? Right? All of that. I mean, it's psychological, man. It was powerful.
Wow. Well, becoming aware of where your comfort level is also a big part of, obviously not just magic, but spiritual growth in general, and becoming aware of subtle levels of things like you're describing. You felt that it was not right for you. That's an important, it's like an immune response. And as we become more energetically and spiritually, I don't want to say advanced, but practiced,
right,
we get better at finding what is right for us and what's not. And that's also a part of magic, is understanding what's healthy and what's not, and how to steer away. And of course, when you're steering away from something like that, it's not just that you're steering away from it, you're steering towards what is more correct for you. So it's a learning experience where you're learning what feels right for you, and what feels right for you is always what is true, more true for you, and what is meant, that the frequency of life that is where you're meant to be.
Yeah, and you didn't ask me if I went back, but I'll answer that question. No.
Did you go back with a Ghostbusters proton pack?
I know, right? The answer is no. And I remember over the years a couple of times, it was like, hey, let's go over. Nah, that's cool. I'm cool. I'm going this way. Let's take a break. Jason, I want to keep you for a little overtime tonight, if that's okay, because I want to discuss, you touched upon this a couple of times, but now I do. I want to talk about your magic, what you practice, what type. The questions are flying in here to Twitter, and we got to get to the bottom of all of that, and we'll do that after this short break. Our guest tonight, Jason Louv, night 1 of Halloween week here on Fade to Black. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Here, and you are listening to my boy Jimmy Church on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter,
but listening to Jimmy Church will.
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it.
Now you can too. Just click on the Numanna banner on jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, go Beckley Teppy. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at jimmychurchradio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and my family is safe because of Numanna Emergency Food Storage. Just go to the Numanna banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code Jimmy10.
Are you intrigued by paranormal talk radio? You'll love the new paranormal radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the paranormal radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Night one of our Halloween week. Tonight it is Jason Louv. Tomorrow night, Maureen Wood's going to be here, Ghost Stories. Wednesday night, Shah the Loon Witch. And I got to tell you, I've got to give Jason some credit, man. He's pretty powerful with the magic spells, because I was walking down the hallway during the break, taking a break, and this thing popped in my head. Jimmy, you will talk about my podcast after the break. That was cool. How did you do that?
Magician never reveals his secrets,
Man,
Jimmy.
apparently not. Where can everybody check out your podcast, Jason?
So my podcast is called Ultra Culture with Jason Louv. You can find it in the iTunes store or anywhere you can get podcasts, including Spotify. You can also find it at my webpage, which is jasonlouv.com. It's going great. Got another with thanks to some extra thanks to Jimmy too. You've been helping me with some advice on proper mic technique and things like that. It's been very, very helpful in growing the show.
Yeah, congratulations on that. And I've been watching the comments with everybody about your podcast, and it seems to be, well, I don't want to say that it's been, how do I want to say this correctly, that everybody just digs it. Right? And I've been watching the comments, and I do follow you on Twitter. And so congratulations, man. Seriously, it's tough to do.
Thank you. Yeah, it's tougher than I thought, but I'm I'm starting to get the hang of it and really enjoying it. I just had the next episode is with Mitch Horowitz, who I think you just had on also.
He was just in town. Did you go check him out?
Oh, he came by. He came by to hang out here, and we had some breakfast and recorded a podcast. He's a friend and a great guy.
He is amazing. Amazing. And, most people don't know this. He's 118 years old.
I believe it. That's the power of positive thinking.
I know, right there. What kind of magic do you practice?
Well, I've tried to practice every single type of magic that I could. I've been through so many systems, from Hermeticism to Kabbalah to Hindu Tantra to Buddhist Tantra to Sufism to even, things like neurolinguistic programming or Voodoo, or, I've been all over the map. And what I've really come to is, I think the core is meditation and single-pointed focus. That's really the core of it. But broadly speaking, I would say, Western magic. I've spent a lot of time doing Enochian. Of course, that led into the John Dee book. But as I think I was hinting at earlier, as you get more practiced with magic, you get you kind of lock into the vibe, and you lock into what the process what you're actually doing, how your mind is actually changing, what the core of ritual is, that it's a focusing mechanism and things like this. And when you really get it, it's kind of like the forms stop mattering. I would certainly, it's kind of like when people get very, very good at martial arts and they train in a lot of different martial arts, it's no longer necessarily what they're doing is not necessarily recognizable as one school or the other. There's like a little bit here, a little bit there, but it just seems kind of effortless. I'm not, trying to make myself sound super cool. I'm just saying that this is kind of like where magic gets to after a long process, long experience. It's not, the props become less important. All of the theory and the academic minutia become less important, and it becomes more about how you live your life. That said, I don't want to totally take it away from the technical processes of magic, because on the other end of that, we have people who just say, oh, well, my life is magical and I just live a magical life. It's not like that either. It actually is a practice that has to be done and that you can do right or wrong. There is a right answer with these things, and it is something that requires practice, just like going to the gym does. But so for me, I'll just underline that the most important things for me are keeping my mind empty and not letting myself get caught up in the chaos of the mind or getting pulled around by other people's will. And so meditation, keeping the mind empty, total focus on whatever it is that I happen to be doing, and then expressing my will into the world, which I'm currently doing, obviously with my podcast and my books and my web presence and the company that I run that does all these things, and manifesting as much as I can of myself in a way that I hope is helpful, and manifesting myself in a way that I hope brings other people up a level and brings them also along the path of magic or spirituality. It doesn't have to be magic, but that's kind of been a major thing that I've done in my magical career, is try to open this to everyone and not just myself.
Did you go through and explore some of the traditional views of magic? The spells, the powders, the black candles, the Psychic Eye bookshop, that kind of thing. Did you go through that?
I've done all of it.
Right.
I've done all of it, Jimmy. I've been through all of it. I by the book, So what I'm talking about is this kind of, I won't say effortless, but this kind of, this kind of empty-handed understanding is not just something that's just how I do it. It's like, that's what I've gotten to from going through these things very, very rigorously and going into every single nook and cranny of these things.
And what did you learn from that? As it's obviously a transition, right? You're going through and evolving. What did you learn from going through all of those traditional views of magic?
Oh, so much. I mean, every single tradition has a major message to offer, and then it's got a lot of stuff. It's a whole universe. It's kind of impossible to answer that question because it's been my whole life. Mm-hmm. But if I would summarize some of it outside of what I already said in terms of kind of what I've come to, it's understanding. This is an interesting question. It's understanding what is health, what fosters human evolution and what does not, and understanding how important and powerful the mind is, and ultimately that it is ours to direct and harness in the way that we choose. And but at a certain point, we can't just use these things to gratify our own desires. That real magic, capital M magic, is about doing whatever you can to assist the evolution of humanity as a whole. That's the key to the whole thing. And being in a role of service. And that's what I try to do. And that's the point, is moving humanity along, because frankly speaking, we probably don't have a whole lot of time left. So there's not a whole lot of time to kind of put on airs and mess around. We have some serious crises ahead of us in the 21st century, and we need conscious people in order to fully face them.
And when it comes to things like white magic and black magic, these are terms that we've heard over and over again. Is that real, or are those just words and classifications?
I'll give you my definition of it. I've actually got a whole podcast on this. That's probably my most loved podcast ever on my show, which is just called White Magic versus Black Magic. Mm-hmm. My broadly speaking, my definition is that black magic is when you use magic to try to get your way and fulfill your selfish desires. And white magic is when you get out of your own way and humble yourself enough to accept what the universe is trying to give you already.
And expand on that a little bit. That's pretty cool. So let's expand on that. So why has society black magic being evil, right? Well, to use it for yourself, is that necessarily evil, or right? No. It's more about what the real crux of that is how you define yourself, because your true self is far beyond the limited story that you tell yourself about who you think you are. And this is where the wisdom comes in and the enlightenment. You have to, your true self, capital S self, I almost said elf, is beyond the mind. It exists, it's post-linguistic. It exists beyond your limited story about who you are. Everyone lives in a cage, right? Most human beings live in a prison constructed of language, constructed of stories told to them by other people or by themselves or by the media or by the internet. Usually the story starts with their parents and then their teachers and their peers, and they're sold an identity of who they are. But it's just a story. The true human self is beyond all of that. And if you're not acting from that, then what you're really doing by doing magic is reinforcing the desires of a personality that was false to begin with. I know we could talk about the philosophy of this forever, right. But really, when we start to talk about enlightenment and things like that, it's about completely overcoming the story of who you think you are, because it's just a fiction. We're all fictional beings. And the fictions are conspiracies created not by sinister governments, but everyone around us conspires to create a fiction, including us, conspires to create this fictional being called Jason Louv or Jimmy Church, and ultimately our true nature is infinite, divine, and untouched, and unchanging, and temporarily manifests as a temporary personality to experience human life. This is a
a Vedantic or a yogic way of looking at it. And so when we really, the whole idea of black magic is largely a creation of Hollywood. There are certainly people who believe that they're black magicians, but by and large, there are Dungeons and Dragons nerds who have just got off on a tangent of taking themselves way too seriously. The real black magic is when we waste our lives by pursuing desires that are beneath us. When we waste our lives by putting all of our energy into the lowest parts of our personality, or just doing things that are pleasurable in the moment, but are not truly living up to the person that we truly could be if we really tried, or we truly lived up to it. And that's what white magic is. White magic is about evolution. And it's certainly not easy. It's about trying to become the best person that you possibly can and of the most help, hopefully, to the world.
Well, wouldn't that be enlightened self-interest, which would be a form of black magic?
Well, enlightened self-interest is an economic term, so
yeah, right.
We're kind of crossing the streams here.
What about, and this just came in from Cosmo, who's obviously on top of his game and listening to this. He said, and then there's red magic. There was a famous sorcerer from Egypt called Al-Tuki who practiced that.
Are we talking about Magic the Gathering?
I'm just reading his question.
I don't know that person or what that means.
Okay, so you've never heard of red magic?
Only in fantasy games.
Oh, how so? Enlighten me.
Oh, there's a famous card game from the 90s called Magic the Gathering, which has different colors of magic: red, white, black, blue, and green.
Oh, very interesting. Jason.
Yeah, but it's just a game.
Thank you so much. How are you going to celebrate Halloween this week?
Good question. Probably by working on my podcast.
Right. And I wanted to ask you, I didn't. Did you attend any Halloween parties?
Not yet, but hope springs eternal, even for one as introverted as myself.
Well, and I want to know, and so does everybody else. What's your costume?
I never dress up. I never dress up.
What?
I know. See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm a very, very mundane person. But the rest of the year is so strange for me that I just don't feel a need to set aside to dress up and be, try to be something that I'm not.
Oh, stop. You know who I'm going to be this year? I did this a few years ago. I'm going to be Fat Elvis.
What should I dress up as, Jimmy? Or maybe people can recommend on Twitter what I should dress up as.
You know what's so funny? When you said that I don't know if you were joking, but when you were a kid, you would dress up as a vampire. You would be the perfect vampire.
That's true. I've been watching. I became convinced. I think I'd had a few drinks a couple of weeks ago. I was completely convinced I was a vampire. It was a very, very strange state of mind. And I've been watching vampire movies all month because it is October. Well, so that's a good idea.
There, one last question on this vein. There is, when you mentioned like paranormal activity, but there is a genuine fascination with vampirism on this planet. It doesn't matter if you're from the Caribbean or if you're from Northern Europe. There is or North America of vampirism, and there is parts of it that are rooted in historical fact. What is the fascination with that? And you don't even have to be practicing magic or Christian or not, or atheist. There is this thing when it comes to vampires, and I don't know if it. Certainly, we have Dracula, but Interview with the Vampire and the Anne Rice novels, all the way through True Blood, all the way to there are many television series, based on this. What is our popular culture's fascination with this?
Well, it's fascinating because the whole story of the vampire has been with us for, like you mentioned, a long time. I mean, people were talking about vampires in Rome It's been around a long time, and there's archaeological evidence, I think, even in Eastern Europe, of people, digging up corpses and staking them because they thought they were going to raise from the dead. Obviously, this is more likely a product of superstition and lack of medical information and mass hysteria than anything else. But I've thought about this a lot, and I think that, vampires fascinate us because there are lots of people who are vampires in the sense of they're predatory. And, I think that humanity, if you really take a broad view on it, there are predator humans. There are, some humans are, very nice and docile and social. And then there are definitely some people who are absolutely predatory in outlook. And we might call that, sociopathy or psychopathy or something like that. But I think it's a little bit deeper than that. There are definitely some people who see it as their role in life to feed on other people. And I don't mean that literally, but I mean that in the sense of they're hunters, and you might meet these people in a corporate environment, like on Wall Street, or just, I don't know, like a terrible boss, or, in many cases, people get into relationships with or marry people who are like this. And I'm sure lots of people can think of instances in their own life where they've come across that. I mean, there are people who are absolutely vampires in the sense that they draw their energy from other human beings. We all have a choice of where we draw energy from. Many of us draw energy from love, our work, our sense of value from our work, from nature, from hobbies that we enjoy. But there are absolutely some people that draw energy from preying on other people. And I mean that psychologically.
Right.
And with their behavior, not like they're drinking their blood, but, we've all met people like that.
Are you going to be speaking anytime soon? Any public stuff?
I hope so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, there it is. It's jasonlouv.com. And the podcast, the webcast, everything is over there too as well. Everybody go check it out. Jason, enjoy your Halloween and do your thing, man. It's always great having you on with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jimmy. That was fun.
You're the best.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to you. Jason Louv, everybody, jasonlouv.com. And you can follow Jason on Twitter at jasonlouv too as well. And just to wrap up a couple of things, I want to stress with everybody, this week is going to be amazing here on the show. Tonight it was Jason Louv, and we discussed every aspect of Halloween. Tomorrow night, Maureen Wood is going to be here. Now, she just co-authored a new book, and it's called, oh man, I just lost it. Ghost Stories. Rita, I lost it. It was right on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, Maureen Wood is going to be with us here tomorrow night. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to set aside one night this week where we could just sit and listen to ghost stories. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow night with Maureen. And then everybody, Wednesday night, Shah the Loon Witch is going to be here. If you haven't sat through our Halloween special with Shah the Loon Witch, I'm going to prepare you for this now. We are going to take over 100 phone calls. To listen to this happen over a 3-hour period with Shah is amazing. She is going to do a reading, 3 cards, boom, and do this with everybody within seconds. And you've got to get ready. You've got to line up. You've got to get ready early and get in line on the phones. It's going to be absolutely incredible. So that is Wednesday night. And then Thursday, Adrian Valera is going to be here. Now, what is going to be going on 11/11 at 11/11 is in Washington, D.C. It's going to be a mass meditation at the Lincoln Memorial. So not all of, but we have about a half a dozen guests that are lined up. This is for Thursday night on Fader night. We have about a half a dozen guests that are going to be here with us. I'll reveal everything tomorrow night. We're lining up guests now, but I think we have everything done. Oh, here it is here. Thank you. It is more Ghost Chronicles. That's what happens after I do a 3-hour show. I'm a little bit brain dead. It's more Ghost Chronicles, and Maureen Wood and her co-author, Ron Kolek. Ron cannot be with us tomorrow night, but Maureen will be here. And it's funny. Stories from the realm of the unknown, the unexplained, and the unbelievable. And we're going to be doing her favorite ghost stories from this book and the original Ghost Chronicles. So there you go. That's our week here on Fade to Black. Now, I want to back up really quick and touch upon what I had said at the beginning of the show tonight. And this is serious. There is a lot of negativity right now that is not only going around this planet, but also inside of our community here. And I quite honestly, I don't get involved with it. There has been so many emails and prodding and trying to get me to respond or comment or get involved with. And I've got to go back and just say to all of you, I'm not concerned. I really honestly don't care. It's not healthy. The negativity and the hate that is going around and the divisiveness, not only in our country, but on this planet, has permeated and gotten into our UFO community. And we quite simply, we don't need it. We don't care about it. And this is something that I'm not going to comment on, and it ain't going to happen. It's not what this show is about. This show is about positivity, exploring, and acquiring knowledge and trying to figure stuff out. It's nothing negative and will never be that. It's not what this show is about. It's not how I live my life, and I will always project that. All right? I want to be very, very clear. So if you are concerned about that, I'll say it again, man. It's easy to block and delete and unfriend because I just don't have time for it. I don't, and I'm not going to pass that on to this community. And that's where I come from, and it's never going to change. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Maureen Wood, more Ghost Chronicles. Night 2 of Halloween week right here on Fade to Black. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. Thank you to Jason Louv. Jason Louv, L-O-U-V, jasonlouv.com. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2018 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Everybody be safe. Go Beckley Tappy.